What's going on? Welcome to the Prospect Warehouse podcast. If you're watching, you can already see who our guest is if you're watching on X Vision or YouTube. But I'm gonna make you, if you're listening, I'm gonna penalize you here and make you wait like 10 seconds to find out. But you can follow me on X at Fantasy Ace Ball. And drum roll, we've got Owen Hurd. So it's actually Owen's first time podcasting with me. We've talked about it for a while, finally getting him on the show. So I'm happy to get Owen. If you're not following him, you can follow him on X at Owen_FBB. So Owen with Fantrax on the podcast for the first time. And we were just joking before we started here that we're doing first base prospects. And it's like not the sexiest position for prospects.
Yeah.
So how you feeling on the jumping into this one, Owen? How do you feel about this depth here that we have? Like how many top 100 guys do we have here? Maybe like 3, 4.
Yeah. So I'm going to use this comparison, and I feel like I'm in the right to use this comparison because this was me at some point. I feel like once you get kind of out of the top few of these guys, it's like when, that little kid brings home that really horrible piece of artwork and you got to look him in the eye and tell him it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Like what I have behind me. Look at my monster that I have back there. Yeah, that's a staple. And then I've got a bunch of cars from my kids. So I got some fire trucks. But yeah, that happens to me. I feel like my kids give me artwork all the time and I can never throw it away. So it's just like, it's just all over the place in my house.
I have some on the wall that my mom has kept from when I was in elementary school, and they're kind of right by my room at home, and I'll go back and look it up and I'm like, I was really like this artistic at one point in my life. There's one, I think it was like, it was supposed to be like a bridge, but it looks like, one of those skinny French dogs, with an arched back. And I just kind of crack up every time I see that.
Nice. I'm lucky because I have a lot of animals, and the animals will destroy these things so that I'm like, oh, sorry, kid, but look at the cat got it or the dog got it or whatever. Sorry, dude. So it's like the animals are my saving grace for destruction of my child's terrible artwork. So Owen, before we get into the prospect stuff here, we're in a league together, a 30-teamer, and I caught that you were on a hunt. Was your hunt successful?
Yes. Sorry, the hunt for in our FYPD that we did.
Yeah, we did it when we were doing the FYPD. I remember I think you mentioned that you were doing you were like out hunting or something like that. So how were you successful?
Yes. By my standards, it was very okay. It was kind of I got a nice buck. We call them management bucks, and that they're so ugly. It's like, thank you for bringing this back to me type of thing. We have a competition every year called El Mas Feo, or in other words, the most ugly. And so my deer is in the running for that. So I feel pretty happy about that. It would be my first nomination for that award. So that was my only one of the year, but overall, pretty good season. Can't complain. Just be out in the country for a few days and, something I love to do.
Well, the good thing is you got a buck, because I went like right before, probably like 2 weeks before you mentioned you were going. And I went with my buddy, and he was lucky enough that he saw a buck and a doe he got them like back to back within like 10 minutes of each other. And
Really?
I did not see a buck that I could shoot the entire time. Every buck I saw was a baby. So it was all doe. And I saw like a ton of them, like 20 or 30 of them. And it was ridiculous. I'm like, are you serious? But I did successfully call a buck in. And one of the guys I was with was like, I've been hunting for like 30 years and I've never seen anybody call because he was like, I had the little thing, and he's like, that's useless. He's like, get rid of it. He's like, it's never going to work. And then I called it in like right next to us, and he's like, it actually worked. That's insane. So I did call a buck in, but it was too young to shoot. And then I definitely had a black bear like coming at us a couple times. So that was kind of scary, but
funny experience. I was out with my cousin one of the days we were at, and we had to use Chat GPT to figure out if it was a pack of hogs or javelinas that was kind of across the creek. We genuinely couldn't tell. They were kind of a little bit farther away from us. So zoomed in, got the picture, sent it to Chat, and it's like, Chat, are these hogs or javelinas? They were in fact javelinas, but funny experience of my hunting trip.
Yeah, I've not had to take a picture of something to ask what it is yet, but that is pretty funny to think about that. Like, I didn't even consider using technology on my hunt, to be honest. I was just kind of Like I'm pretty old school, so like I'm always like trying to put my phone away, really. But that's actually a pretty good tool. So very, very good idea there. That's a smart thing to do because, like, for me, when the bear was coming, I was like, I don't think I can shoot this. What happens if it comes at me? And then like we were talking about it, and you cannot in Florida, you can't shoot a bear unless it touches you first. So literally, it has to touch you before you can shoot it. Even if it's charging straight at you, you cannot do anything until it actually touches you, which is insane.
So your options, if it's just charging at you, not actually touching you, or just like run away or stand your ground.
Yeah, basically stand your ground, especially because you can't even buy bear spray. So before we went, I tried to buy bear spray. I was like, just in case. And you can't buy it in Florida. It's like it's illegal to buy because they're like it's mace. You're gonna like spray it on a person or something. So I couldn't buy bear spray. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'll just take my chances. And then I go out there, and then what are the odds? But I see like a 450-pound black bear, and the first time we see it, it like bolted around a corner. And then I was like, what if that thing like raptors us and comes from the side? And we're like, ah, we're cool. And then like 2 minutes later, it came right back, and then it started like coming straight at us. And we were in a blind, but it totally spotted us. That thing was like very, very smart. But yeah, it was
Yeah, there was
interesting.
last thing on the hunting I'll share. There was one time a couple of years ago, we were tracking a deer, and it was the most worst hunting experience of my life. We were looking for this thing for probably like 5.5 hours, no luck. And we were just down in the middle of some brush one time, and then I just turn around behind me, and there's a hog that's just like staring me down like 10 feet away from me. I don't have anything on me at this time, so I'm like kind of slowly backing away, but like my heart was racing in that moment. I'm like, I'm face to face with a hog with two babies right behind it. Like, I don't know if I'm going to make it out of this alive, but that was one of my more memorable experiences. Wouldn't want to be in that spot again, but
Yeah,
funny to
people don't
look
realize
back
those.
on.
Yeah, people don't realize those things can really mess you up. They can really
Yeah.
mess you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get to the first baseman here. Number 17, if you're watching on the screen, is Cale Fountain, 20-year-old from the Padres. So Cale Fountain, besides having a pretty, I guess, I don't know if you like that name, it's interesting. Like you're going to remember it, that's for sure. Interesting tools here. Didn't have the best season, but did show some speed. 1.7 mil out of high school as a fifth rounder. So that's a pretty good payday for a fifth rounder out of high school. They took a nice little bet on him. And like I think that there's a little something here. 21 steals, so you gotta like that for a first baseman. I don't know like how that's really gonna play. fScores don't have enough data to really judge anything besides the speed, and 115 is the highest speed score we have out of all these first basemen we're going to talk about today. So interesting enough profile. Will he ever be a Padre? Probably not, because if he's good, we'll probably just turn him in a year or two. But what do you think about Cale Fountain?
Yeah, so I think I think there's a lot more intrigue here than what would kind of immediately kind of meet the eye on a surface line. Big dude, 6'5", 225, that kind of size from a prep hitter. Maybe the power can be potentially plus, which I think a lot of the profile is kind of contingent on. I'm not sure the speed translates to more than maybe 8 to 10 stolen bases in the upper levels. I think the OBP skills are interesting, but I think it's a very kind of bat dependent profile. And I think if the hit tool isn't going to be better than a 40 or so, we need to see more kind of power come in as he kind of fills out that frame. But I do think there's some intrigue here. Not sure he's going to be a top 100 guy, but I do think maybe a guy who can maybe be a 25 home run hitter in the big leagues with a, maybe 230, 240 and good OBP skills if all goes right.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he ran into bad luck at A-ball. 244 BABIP is pretty bad. 76% contact rate is pretty solid, though, for a high schooler. 6'5", 225 pounds. So he's a big boy. Uh, we're going to jump to number 16 here. Cam Collier on the list. That's a guy that I've actually seen in person. When I saw him in person, wasn't really impressed. That was back when he was with Daytona, when he was at the Tortugas. It's been a couple of years since I saw him, and I actually saw him with Sal Stewart at the same time. And that was back when Collier was like the guy, right? And then I was like, no, Sal's like, when I saw him, I was like, Sal's way better. And now that's what it is. Now everyone's on that page. So it actually turned out to be true. The eyes sometimes will tell you the true story between a couple of guys. But Collier, interesting player for sure. So, former first rounder. He's got the bloodlines going, but really hasn't put it together statistically from, like what he has under the hood. Strikes out a little bit too much. Contact rates are kind of okay. Like, I just don't really know. Like, he'll probably make the majors just based on pedigree, I would guess. But, like, I don't think that there's anything really like special here. He just kind of seems kind of average to me. Like I don't really know what we're gonna get unless like something major changes for Collier because we're looking at like 73% contact rate. Like, yeah, 119 extra base hit plus is pretty good. That means he's getting, above average extra base hits compared to other people at his level. But the 27% K rate is concerning. No speed to speak of. And just like the power is not what you would expect for, the guy who hits to the EVs that he can get to. So he just hasn't really reached it. So what do you think about Collier?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super wowed with this profile. Like watched a good amount of him. I don't really like the swing at all. Maybe there's some kind of fixable elements there, but I just don't think the swing presently will allow him to kind of make the most of the power, especially as he moves up. The K rate was kind of alarming to me, especially for a guy who hasn't had a ton of exposure in the upper minors yet. Looked pretty good like towards the end of the year there, so that was encouraging. But I do think we're going to need to see better ability for him to hit lefties. The swing mechanics need to clean up a little bit, and overall, it's just not a profile that I love, given just the dependency on the bat. And I'm just not sure that we're going to see that, or it's quite there yet.
Yeah, in 2024 he did have 20 bombs, but 194 ISO and the hit tool wasn't as good then. So it's almost like what was he trying this year to trade off and like improve the hit tool and it limited his power? I'm not really sure. Like he did get hurt, so who knows how that factored into his season. But he's going to be 21 next year, so it's maybe like kind of like a make or break season for him for next year.
Yeah, fun Cam Collier fact. He used to actually follow me on X. I don't know what happened there, but maybe I'd be a little bit more nicer towards him if he still did. No, I'm just kidding.
15, we got Davison De Los Santos. So he's been around for a little bit. That's another guy I've actually seen live. So, and actually, when I saw him last spring, he actually kind of impressed me. I was like, oh, his plate skills are definitely improved when I saw him, but he didn't have the best year last year. The good thing is that we have a ton of data on him because he was in AAA. But you can see, like, as everyone has always talked about with him forever, the contact rate's 70.8%, not ideal. It's not terrible, though. It's not like Spencer Jones level. So, like, it could be a lot worse. 80.8 zone is actually not that bad. He is very aggressive. Like, he's always been very aggressive. This is one thing I really like about him, this 142 extra base hit plus. This dude will hit a ton of extra base hits, even though last year he only had 12 home runs versus 2024 when he had 30, whatever. He still was hitting for a lot of extra base hits. He still hits the crap out of the ball. 107.9 90 FEV, 118.5 max is a monster max EV. So he does hit the ball hard, but like obviously the angles this year, something was off. 2024, he was on the angles, which is why he hit all those bombs. But this last year, 52.4% ground ball rate, only an 18.6% fly ball rate. That is terrible for a power hitter. 9.4 air pull is also terrible for a power hitter. So obviously, whatever he was trying to do, trying to improve the contact, trying to help the plate skills, because I'm sure that's what the Marlins told him when they traded for him. Hey, dude, like we like your power, but you got to get your contact rates up. You got to try to work on not striking out as much, try to walk a little more. All that stuff dinged his ability to get to power because his angles were far, far worse this year. So what do you think about Davison De Los Santos? Do you think he's a major leaguer or do you think he's just like a quadruple A guy?
So I'm gonna apologize to my colleague Lewis analysis in advance because I know he is a big DDLS guy, and I'm not trying to tirade on him here, but the ground ball rate has been persistent. It just to run through like 2021, it was over 56% at each of the stops he made. 2022, 56.2% in low A, 50% in high A. Then kind of two stops in triple A, 50.9% last year and 53.3% in 2024. I mean, the angles were slightly worse even in 2024, 5.9 and 3.1 between the two stops there. I don't think the hard hit rate doesn't wow me either for a power hitter. It's 43.9% last year. I just kind of wonder if this is like a Christian Encarnacion Strand type trajectory minus the OBP skills. The chase rates are really rash. I don't think the hit tool is good. He's not good defensively, which doesn't really aid his chances into getting in the lineup, and the swing strike rates are also high. So I'm not really a DD. And I think too, you can also look at unprotected in the Rule 5 and then traded for a setup reliever. I don't think that speaks too highly about front office's confidence in him. He's not a guy that I'd be looking to acquire for kind of anything more than like a bench player in kind of a deeper league right now.
I agree. That's the perfect comp. CES. It's literally the same comp that I had on him. Love it. That's right there. So we're on the same page with him. Number 14 here is Rafael Flores, who came over to the Pirates from the Yankees this last season. So we'll type him on the thing right here and get his numbers up if you're watching on YouTube or Xvision. For whatever reason, has his position as catcher. I assure you, he is not a catcher. He's a first baseman. Maybe he's a corner outfielder at this point because they brought in O'Hearn. One thing is he did debut in the majors, only 7 games, but the interesting thing that means is that he's on the 40-man roster, so we could get some playing time, probably a bench guy for this year. Obviously, the contact rates are not the greatest, 66.9% at AAA, 68.5 on the season. Even the zone is pretty bad, 74.8. But EVs are slightly above average, 1.56 90th, 1097 max. Not really ideal for a power hitter. But Flores, I don't know, like 22 home runs. So he was producing last year in the minors, 6 steals, 280 batting average. So I think he's probably a good bench player, which like you're like, oh, here's your top 15 prospect first base rankings, Tim, and you're talking about a bench hitter. But like, I don't know. I think he could be a good bench hitter, and that might be the best you can get. But the good thing is that he will produce for you for this year. So if you're in a super deep league and you just need a guy who's probably going to get some at bats, then this is a guy who's probably going to get some at bats and play first in left field or right field or something like that. What do you think about Flores?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what you said. I think, maybe I think more realistically, a bench player may be a guy who, I don't think we're getting like, a everyday regular at first base, but maybe a guy who can give you 400, 450 PAs. One thing that I do like about Flores that I don't about DDLS is the launch angles, which are really good despite kind of the lowerish EVs for a power hitter. So I do kind of wonder if that allows the power to play up, maybe I think, as you mentioned, like 20 to 2 home runs can be a realistic number for him. The contact rates aren't great, but one thing I do like is the kind of minimal chase rates, 24.8 and 14.4 between 2 stops in AAA last year. I think that's encouraging. And, I think when you kind of have a lowerish chase rate and a lowerish contact rate, it kind of leads a little bit of belief that maybe they can succeed despite the lower contact numbers. So yeah, I'd agree with your assessment. I think, maybe a guy who, I would be fine with him as a kind of a bench player in deeper leagues, probably up this year, but maybe kind of a, or in the early years, maybe kind of a 15 home run, okay average, okay OBP type of guy. I don't think he does anything particularly well, but not really, any glaring red holes for me.
Yep. Number 13 is Ethan Petrie. So he's one of the more interesting guys because he was just a recent draftee. So this is actually a guy that I expect to climb within these rankings, but some of these other guys have better proximity. That's just what you're going to run into with first basemen. A lot of first basemen in the minor leagues are like failed outfielders, or like they're just not good enough defensively in outfield to cut it, and then they get moved to first. So a lot of the quote unquote first base prospects are going to be on the older side for that reason. But Ethan Petrie, again, like you see here, it says outfielder. Like he's probably going to be a first baseman. But he was just drafted this last year, drafted out of South Carolina, paid $2 million, early second rounder. Didn't play full gamut of games this last year. So I would, not really pay too much attention to the stats from this year, but he had 23 homers as a freshman, 21 as a sophomore, and then only 10 this year as a junior. So it really was his worst season for college. Maybe if he was healthy, he would have gone even higher in the draft. But he's an exit velocity guy. Like this guy's an exit velocity king. He had a 114 mile per hour hit at one point, 112.4 in the Arizona Fall League. And then Cape Cod, he led the Cape Cod League with a 105.2 mile per hour, 90th percentile EV2 coming up. So exit velocities, check. He's got them. This dude is a power hitter. I guess the main question for him is going to be, is the hit tool good enough to match the power? 66% contact rate in his little debut here is a little rough. It's not ideal. He is pretty aggressive and then was hitting the ball on the ground too a lot in this little debut here. A 54% ground ball rate is not ideal for a power hitter. So like obviously like the transition from metal to wood, now that he's going to be doing it longer, maybe it takes a little time for him to get the angles right with the new wood bat, but the EVs are for sure there. and definitely a name to watch and could be a big riser within these rankings. What do you think about Petrie?
Yeah, I'd agree with you, and I think kind of the power alone just gives him that upside as a guy who can, I don't know if he's going to crack, top 100 with kind of how the hit tool and the rest of the profile is, other than the power. But I do think a guy who could kind of gain some helium. I really like the frame, and I think the approach is better too for than we've seen in a lot of power hitters. In his kind of college career, 21.9 K rate, 14.6 walk rate is really promising. To see the EVs kind of translate with wood bats was also encouraging. And I think there's a chance where I think there's a universe where, maybe the hit tool is just a 40, but you're looking at kind of a double plus power guy. And I still think that's a very playable profile as a big league regular, even with the rest of the profile. But, alternatively, there's also risk in kind of these profiles, especially in college bats when, the contact rates are bad in college, kind of bad in the lower minors, and they just simply don't hit enough to kind of maximize the power potential.
Yeah, for sure. Number 12 is Blaze Jordan. So now a Cardinal from former Red Sox here, former high school superstar. Obviously got the cool name. Blaze Jordan is like maybe one of the better baseball names. But he's actually one of the weird things about Blaze Jordan. It seems like he's been around forever. He's he's way younger than you think. He's only going to be 23 next year. And like, I guess because he was kind of like this big high school kid, like coming up, like, mashing at home run derbies as a high schooler. Like he just seems like he's been around for a long, long time. But he's still pretty young. So it's not like he's cornered into quadruple A role yet. Like there's time. Obviously, he's kind of like he's a bigger dude. So he's probably stuck at first. Like maybe he can play a little left field. Maybe he's like part-time DH. But for him, it's going to be like, how much can he hit? There are a few things that I really like about him. There's 150 extra base hit plus. So just tons of extra base hits. 19 bombs this last year, tied with an 81.9% contact rate. So this good dude can actually hit, right? 81.9 contact, 88.2 zone contact. He is pretty aggressive, 50% swing rate. So he is pretty aggressive and he does chase a little bit. So like the discipline, even though he only had 11% K rate, he does chase a little bit, but he seems to make contact even outside of the zone. It might just be one of these really weird profiles where like for the longest time I was like, man, how does Ozzy Albies do this? Like he's got like 40% chase rates and he's like still good. It's like, how does he make it happen? But he just like makes contact outside of he's able to make contact outside of the zone and like it's not automatic outs. So I think Blaze might have some of that ability here. fScores kind of like him: 108 power, 100 hit, 109 discipline. So, and then a 147 age adjusted WRC plus. So there's some pretty good stuff to like here for Blaze. I mean, obviously, like the Cardinals have this whole corner problem with like Burleson and all these guys. Like they just traded Arenado. It's like, is Gorman actually going to play down the middle? So it's like, is there room for him? Obviously, Heim likes him enough to trade for him when I don't know if Heim drafted him. I probably drafted him. But obviously he likes him enough to trade back for him. So I think that there could be like some interesting profile here. Like, I don't think he's going to be a superstar by any means, but I think he could be a pretty solid hitter, have a decent career as like a average to above average bat. It's just going to be like, where can they put him defensively? Because like, where is that glove going to fit? Like, he's not going to be a third baseman. I know he's played third before, but he's like too big. Like, if you actually look at the dude, he's like, he doesn't look like a third baseman, right? So like, where are you going to hide him on the field? But I think the bat's going to play.
Yeah, no, I think there's definitely some really interesting intangibles here with the bat. Like the zone contact rates, as you mentioned, are good for a guy who can still kind of hit the ball hard. Launch angles aren't kind of quite where I'd like to see them for a power hitter. Neither is the kind of hard hit rate. Still young though. I'm going to throw out an interesting comp for you, just kind of one that kind of came to my mind looking through some of the data. But Lennon Sosa is kind of a maybe a kind of MLB player that I could see like an upper maybe a near not 100th, not best case outcome for Blaze Jordan, but like maybe a 90th percentile outcome for Blaze Jordan. I can see him kind of fitting that, low average kind of, maybe a bit better OBP in that regard, but kind of high chase rate, but can still, make enough contact to kind of give you, a little over 20 home run power. But granted, kind of not a profile I really like from a first baseman, in that, there's going to be the contact concerns with the chase rate. And then, the game power isn't kind of truly stand out in my opinion. So I do think there's an uphill path for him for everyday playing time, but I think there's an intriguing floor as kind of a useful utility infielder with maybe a bit of upside for more.
Yep, I agree with that. Next on the list is going to be Xavier Isaac. I'm definitely like one of the lower guys on Isaac. I think I've got this is number 11 here. Yeah, number 11. So I'm probably one of the lowest guys on him. I know a lot of people really like him, but I just can't stand these splits. They're terrible. We're actually just joking last podcast. I know not a great thing to joke about, but John is like, oh, maybe the new brain will help him hit lefties better because if you look at these splits, it's just like okay, 275, 411, 637 slash over 1,000 OPS against righties, 9 bombs. That's great. The contact is still bad, 62%. But lefties, this is just like completely unusable. 063, 286, 083 slug against lefties. Like that's not even, you can't even try that. But like obviously, like power potential's there. It's been maybe like a year and a half since he's been very, very productive on the field. He's still young, so I mean, like that's still on the side. And like, yeah, maybe he had off field medical things bothering him, and maybe that helps him now that he's going to be healthy. Hopefully, going into next year, sounds like he's going to be healthy for the beginning of the year. So those are all good things for Isaac. Yeah, I just don't know how you feel about him, but for me, when I see those splits and it's the Rays, like the platoon king team, I'm just like, okay, this guy's 100% going to be a platoon guy. And it's the Rays. It's like, okay, so that means he's only ever going to get 400 at bats, like forever. So like that already is going to ding someone off the bat for me for long-term value. And with the name, because it's a high name, this is a dude that I would just be like, if he starts off strong, like get him and then resell him. I would just not be buying it because the splits are so bad.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I think also like the inability to pull fly balls is really concerning to me. Very kind of ground ball heavy in that regard. You know, I mean, I think like you mentioned the splits, and I think a lot of people just kind of can get over attached to Rays prospects, and that oh, they're so good at finding guys and developing these guys, but. I think where you have him ranked is probably where around the range I would too. Definitely overcorrected on him hard after 24. I think I had him a lot higher in hindsight than I should have. I do think there's enough intrigue with the power there to look at kind of a below average hitter guy, but the platoon splits have got to improve. He's still been kind of a young prospect playing, against more advanced pitching. That kind of gives me a little bit of optimism, but I think right now, like I agree in that, if I did have Isaac, I'd be kind of waiting to see if he kind of starts up back next season hot, and then see if anyone will value him again as a top 150 guy, and then package him away for kind of a big league or maybe in a deeper league, maybe a few prospects that kind of could have, that kind of similar top 150 upside.
Yeah, for sure. No, we're gonna get into top 10 here, and this is a Doc guy. This is like one of Doc's favorite players. It's Callan Moss, with the Pirates. He was with the Royals before. 22-year-old, high A. So it'd be nice to see him move up a little bit here. Now at the Pirates, Esmer Lean's going to be blocking him a little bit unless someone moves to the outfield here. But fScores really like him. 104 power, 101 hit, 105 discipline, 100 speed. It's very rare to see a guy with triple digits in every single one of these boxes. So that's actually pretty impressive on the fScore side. 6'3", 225 pounds. So nice build here for Callan Moss. If Doc was on here, he'd tell you where he was born and like all that kind of crap, and to go down straight narrative street. But good line, 288, 381, 458. So it's pretty solid back of the baseball card stats. 13 home runs, 143 extra base hit, 74.8 contact. So a solid hit tool. Plate skills, nothing too shabby here. 12% walk, 22% K rate. So pretty solid player across the board here. Interesting, 17 steals for a first baseman. So maybe he does have the athletic ability to move to the outfield. One might hope, because the Pirates need as many kind of like prospect hitters as they can get at this point. But he's professional. I think he could be a quicker mover. Like they don't have to like be like, oh, he's going to be in AA all year. Like I think he'd be a quicker mover and probably be like a AA, AAA guy this year, and maybe debut in 2027. So how do you feel about Moss?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting profile. I mean, kind of a lack of an upper minor sample yet, but ratios look good. Game power, not kind of quite what you want to see from a first base type profile, but the contact rates are good. There's not really a glaring ground ball issue. The swing strike rates are promising. The swing rate is a little lower than I'd like to see. I think that's something that could be kind of exploited as he moves up a little bit. 41.1 and 42.0 between his two stops in high A last year. I think he's going to have to be a bit more aggressive to really make the most of the bat as he moves up. But Yeah, I think there's some intrigue here. I remember when we did those 30-man startups, Doc took Callan Moss in like round 7 of our prospect draft. I'm like, what? Like, yeah, we're just outside kind of the top 200 guys. You still have kind of top 150 guys on the board. But now I'm looking back at it, I'm like, okay, maybe I was too quick to judge. Maybe there's a path to a boring regular who can give you, average-ish, maybe a little bit better power and some solid contact skills.
Yeah, we're a couple of years removed since we've had exit velocities from him. But when he was in A ball, he was getting exit velocities in like the 10, like 90th exit velocities in the 106 range, which is above average. So he's definitely got above average exit velocities. There's even like apparently in high school he had a 111 max at one point. So there's definitely some power in here, more than what we've seen in the game power so far. So pretty interesting profile here. So he makes the top 10. And number 9 on the list is going to be Luke Adams, who's probably going to be a big mover, I think, in the next couple of maybe this year even, because he's pretty close. So again, first baseman, you're going to get a lot of proximity. Luke Adams is probably going to be, I see it has him listed as third base, so he's not going to be a third baseman. He's probably going to be a first baseman unless they decide to move him to like left field. The Brewers have a lot of guys that play like a lot of the same positions. So it's kind of like a little trouble with him. But you've got a little bit of power here. You got a little bit of speed. Contact tool is maybe a little concerning, but interestingly, 231 batting average, 78% contact, pretty solid. One of the things that I think is his issue is a 32% swing rate. He's not swinging enough. He's probably missing some good pitches here, but it's pretty weird to see a 231 batting average but then still an 862 OPS. That's because he has a near 20% walk rate. So it's almost like, and I know it's another Luke, but it's almost like a Luke Rayleigh profile here for Luke Adams, with some steals, some power, a lot of walks, but a lower batting average. So pretty interesting. You see a lot of the damage is coming against righties, with all 11 of his homers against righties, 0 against lefties. Though he's not nothing against lefties, because he still has a 450 OBP against lefties. So he's still walking against them. And he did end the season in Double-A. So pretty interesting stuff here for Luke Adams. What do you think about Adams?
Yeah, no, I know the STS model loves him for kind of the power and OBP skills. I'm a bit lower on the power, and I do kind of have my concerns about the swing rate as you outlined, and also kind of the swing itself, kind of funky, unorthodox, kind of high leg kick.
Mm-hmm.
Um, not generally a kind of swing I really look at as like, man, I love this swing. But I do think, like, with how kind of rankings have them now, I kind of wonder if really the gap is all that big between, Luke Adams and someone like Ryan Clifford, who is kind of a back end top 100 guy on some rankings. And, I looking at the profiles, I'm like, okay, there's still the 3 true outcomes risk. There's some hit tool concern. There's kind of defensive, and there's not going to be much speed there. It might always kind of be kind of a high walk rate, kind of maybe, 18 to 20-ish home run power with good OBP skills. But like, I think I think it's an interesting contrast there, because I've seen Ryan Clifford ranked probably higher than I would have him ranked, but then I've seen people have like Luke Adams a lot lower. So I think there's an interesting buying opportunity depending on the cost, but also just, not generally my kind of favorite type of profile in a first baseman.
Yeah. Next on the list is going to be Tommy White, who may ultimately be third base rather than first base. Ponce and I talked about him quite a bit for a little bit on the third base one. But Tommy White, pretty interesting. Ponce is saying he doesn't think he's going to get the power back that he had at LSU, that a lot of it was from metal bats. But I think if he actually gets promoted fast enough to play in that stadium, we might see a surprising power boost from him coming from the minors to the majors. I do think he probably will get run at third base, just because they've got so many, like obviously Nick Kurtz is at first. You got Soderstrom had to move to the outfield because Kurtz is at first. You've got like all these guys kind of blocking those positions. So they may give him run at third base, especially because they don't really have another third baseman in the org. But he has a good hit tool, 81% contact rate. So really solid hit tool. And like my comp for him coming up is Nolan Arenado as a hitter, where I'm just like, I think that if he does get the power, it's going to be because of pull and because of angles, because he's such a good hitter. And his contact rates are kind of like ahead of the curve for a lot of these other guys. So maybe he could be like a 25% 30 home run hitter. And if he is, it's going to be a lot of stadium and a lot of angles that benefit him. So it could be almost like an Arenado, Colorado type profile here for me, because he's got similar swing mechanics when I watch him. Like that's the first guy I think of when I watch him. But I'm a Cardinals fan, so I've watched a lot of Nolan Arenado, so those guys are going to pop in my head first. But that's kind of like the vibes that I get as a hitter for Tommy Tanks.
Yeah, no, I think like as you mentioned, the strides he's made as a hitter since turning pro are interesting and kind of give him more of a floor if we don't kind of see the power that we saw at LSU. I think the defensive position is a big question because as you mentioned, Nick Kurtz has first locked down for the foreseeable future. He made 18 errors in 77 games at third in 2025. I don't think that's a profile that's going to play at third base in the majors. But, I kind of wonder if we just kind of see Tommy White as a trade chip down the road. Eventually they just locked up Jacob Wilson today. Do you move kind of LDV to third, or kind of what does that kind of infield of the future looks like? Do they still have some hope for Zach Geloff? But I think White is interesting. I'd like to see, a bit more power from him, given kind of the aggressive swing profile, but not a profile that I hate, and just kind of more of a kind of wait and see, and let's see what the data looks like in AAA. But I like the Arenado comp, at least from the plate, because like I do kind of see like White being a guy where maybe like not like Arenado's peak, but like more of a not to rub any salt in the wound, but like a Cardinals Arenado, where not elite power, not like elite contact skills either, but like good enough at both to where you can be a solid regular and get some good OBP out of that too.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with that. Definitely not like Pete Colorado. That's a Hall of Famer right there. So next on the list is gonna be Jonathan Long, who like a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, that's a pop-up guy. He was not anything until this year, but he is actually really good in 2024 too. Like actually very consistent, similar seasons. So pretty interesting. If I can actually type his name in correctly on this thing here. So Jonathan Long popping up, but 24-year-old, played 140 games at AAA. So there's a good chance that we could see him this year. Just like how are they going to make room for him? I probably need an injury for Jonathan Long, unless Ballesteros is just completely terrible and they need someone to come in and be like a DH hitter type. Just because obviously Michael Busch is blocking him at first. So I don't really know like positionally like how he's going to get in there, but obviously he's a good enough hitter, especially like hit style. He's a hitter, just like Tommy White, not more of like a power first guy with an 80% contact rate, almost an 88% zone. This guy's very. You see if he has a 102 hit, it should be higher than that. I think contact rates are great. 13% walk, 19% K rate, 129 extra base hit plus. So very solid guy, not getting to the optimal angles, which is probably what brings this hit tool grade down here. It's only a 10.1% pull, but has pretty solid EVs, 106.90, 111.6 max, 46% ground ball rate is not ideal for power, but he had 20 home runs in the minors last year, 17 the year before that. So like if he's a 270 hitter with 20 home runs, if he got full-time run, 20, low 20s home runs, that's a solid bat. You'll take that all day. So, which I think that's what he would be if he gets to run, but it's just like, where are they going to play him? And oddly, 5'11", 210. So he's like a shorter first baseman. So maybe they do, say, hey, here's an outfield glove, try to go learn left field. Like I don't know what they'll do with them, but the bat is good enough that he's ready. Like he could be, he's ready to hit now in the majors.
Yeah, I think like Jonathan Long is just kind of a very prime example of how like people can kind of fade older prospects. I think he's a super underrated prospect. Like I personally have him in kind of the back 25 of my top 100. Like I love the 24.8 chase rate is really, really good for a guy that, is giving you an 80% plus contact rate and a, above average zone contact rate with, limited swinging strike rates. And the EVs are good, 90.9 average, 111.1 111.6 max. The launch angles could be a little bit better, but still 10.3 isn't a ground ball heavy hitter. The hard hit rate is still very solid. I just like this profile. I'm not sure like from an upside level you can put him quite as like kind of some of the other guys on this list, but I do think this is a very high probability kind of long-term big leaguer. And I think the position is a valid question, but like there's just a lot more that I like in this profile from a kind of a bat heavy first base profile than kind of some of the other guys where it's like, really high chase rates, poor hit tools, like, kind of haven't seen the raw power actualize into game power yet. And I don't really have those same concerns for Jonathan Long.
Yeah, definitely. The only the only concern I have is where is he going to fit in the lineup this year? So number 6 is Esmeralin Valdez. This is the first guy that made my top 150 rankings, and now we're already zoomed up to number 109. So he was 109 on my list. Obviously, like he's kind of the talk of the Arizona Fall League. So unless this is your first prospect podcast that you've listened to on the whole year, you've probably heard quite a bit about him just because of how good he was in the Fall League. Where he smashed it was a 368, 513, 842 line. Absolutely ridiculous with 8 home runs, 27 RBI. So led the Fall League in homers, led the Fall League in RBI, second in total bases, first in OPS. So just a monster across the Arizona Fall League for Esmeralin Valdez. But a double-A guy, he actually moved pretty quick through the org. Like he started at A-ball, moved all the way up to double-A. I think he's going to get to triple-A, or he'll probably debut at triple-A. And the question is going to be like, will he debut this year after they brought in O'Hearn? So John and I were talking a little bit about that. Maybe a cup of coffee is kind of like where we ended up for this year, unless he does play in the outfield instead of first base. Or maybe they try to, kind of do both. I think O'Hearn's actually played in the outfield a little bit before in the past too. But you see here, 26 bombs last year is pretty crazy. 150 extra base hit plus. So tons of power here. 128 on the fScores for power. So I like Valdez a lot. Like contact rate 71.2. It actually improved in AA, 73.5 in AA. So it actually got better. And then with the Fall League he had too, this is just like a guy who keeps getting better and better. So he's progressing. And then he's also, like I talked about, like he's fun because he's like a social media guy. So he's like all over social media, like posting his workouts and stuff like that. So this is a guy that like almost the Pirates need guys like that. You need Connor Griffin. You need these guys who are going to like have fun and be like out there and like, kind of like make the Pirates not boring. Right. So like, I think that's what he could be. My comp for him on my, my write-ups was Fernando Tatis Jr. mechanics with a Spencer Torkelson-esque profile. So that's kind of like what I got is you're probably looking at like Torkelson bat line or whatever, but like he's got, like obviously like a Dominican dude, he's going to like copy the Tatis batting stance. Like that's what kids do, right? Like you're going to like, who are the coolest best hitters? You're going to like copy their stance. So that's what I think where he got a stance from. But that's Valdez. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really intrigued, especially by the year-over-year improvements, especially with the swing strike rate. Like, early on, it was like looking like, oh, this is a guy, who's just going to get, barraged in the upper minors once he gets to better arms. Like 2023, he was running like 27.2, 17.9, and 24.8 swing strike rates between 3 stops there. And then that got a lot better, posted much improved kind of contact rates from the previous years last year. So I think that's really interesting. I like the Torkelson comp that you threw out. I think that I'm not quite sure that we're getting kind of a 30 home run bat in Valdez, but I do think like it is kind of a firm kind of power over hit profile with kind of enough power to still kind of be in that consideration as kind of a prospect that can kind of fit in as an everyday first baseman, even with kind of, the limited athleticism and limited defensive value, or maybe someone that you kind of throw in that kind of corner outfield.
Yeah, definitely. And the next guy is kind of in a similar spot defensively. Like what's going to happen is 5th on the list is Ryan Clifford, who is my 102 prospect. So I think Clifford could actually get some decent run this year in pro ball since Alonso is now gone. It all kind of depends on like how the guys play defensively. Like how are they going to be at first? You got like Polanco at first base this year. Then you've got, I guess Beatty could always play there, and you've got they have so many guys right now. It's like how are they going to figure that out? Maybe they trade one of those guys too. Like if they trade Vientos, it would clear some room for Clifford. Like who's to me, he's obviously ready. Like he's played very well at AAA this year, despite a 219 average. He still had a 150 extra base hit plus, 5 home runs, 74% contact rate. So the contact rate was smooth across all levels, 88% zone. So really nice hit skills for Clifford, especially the zone contact. You love that for a power hitter, 88% zone. 107.4 90th EV, 111 max, 93.6 average EV. Good angles too. So you see here, his angle. We have a bar graph with his angles in AAA. 15-degree average launch angle with a 12.3% barrel rate and a 19.8 air pull. So really, really good angles. 29 bombs on the season. So Ryan Clifford, really fun, interesting prospect who I think is kind of underrated right now. Like a year ago, there was a lot of steam behind him, and I feel like he keeps getting better. But it's almost like there's like people are bored of him, or I don't know, or they just don't trust Mets prospects, hitting prospects at this point. I'm not really sure like why. I feel like there's like a there's no steam about it. There's no stock up on Ryan Clifford, but I think he's actually getting better, and he's pretty close proximity wise that there should be more on him. So how do you feel about Clifford?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think some of it too can attribute to kind of the three true outcomes narrative. But like especially now that we have kind of the Statcast data from AAA, I'm kind of not sure I'm kind of more bought into that. I do think there's kind of a clear path to a regular. The sub 23% chase rate is really good. The zone swing rate is not quite. 64.1 is fine in my opinion. I don't think it screams like way too passive hitter that will just get kind of eaten up by big league pitchers. The contact rates are really good. The 108.9 90th EV was one of the best in the minors. So I think for anybody that I would kind of look at like kind of a Torkelson type comp, I think Clifford really fits that. And I think too, something that kind of gets underrated in his profile is like he's a good defender at first. Like I think the arm is plus in my opinion. I don't think the speed is ever going to be carrying, but I think he's athletic enough to kind of be in that not a guy where you're kind of shuffling in kind of a first base kind of DH type role, but a guy that can give you kind of everyday reps at first base. And I do think with the departure of kind of Pete Alonso and Jorge Polanco, in my opinion, better suited for that DH type role anyway. That I think we're going to get a pretty hefty sample of PAs from Ryan Clifford in the majors in 2026.
Yeah, agreed. Number 4, this is a big time riser for me, Ralphie Velasquez. So we're going from 102 all the way to 44 here. That's how much I love Ralph. I might be the highest guy on Ralphie, but he had a crazy second half. Like if people switched to football and weren't paying attention in the second half, like he was so good, which you can see right here. Like his double A line and double A, he had 330, 405, 589 with 5 bombs. He's so good in the second half. Like his whole second half. I'll move his slider here. Let's get his whole second half in here real quick. Roughly second half. In the second half, roughly 222 plate appearances, 321, 401, 577 slash, 10 bombs, 150 extra base hit plus. Only a 14% K rate with a 10% walk rate. I love this profile so much. He is such a good hitter. Like I know, like I don't think he's gonna catch, right? Like I know he could be a catcher. I think he's going to move to first. My comp for him is a lefty only Victor Martinez. Like I feel like even his stance reminds me of Victor Martinez. Like the way he hits, like how he doesn't strike out reminds me of Victor Martinez. Like everything about this guy reminds me of Vmar. But 55 hit is what I threw on him. 50 out of 55 on the plate approach. 60 out of 65 on the power. So this is a really fun player, and he's super young. Like he was 20 last year doing this at double A. He's going to be 20 and he was a young 20. So I think he's going to start the season as a 20-year-old, but it'll be like technically his age 21 season, but a 158 age adjusted WRC plus for Ralphie. So I'm a big fan of Ralphie.
Yeah, no, I'm right there with you. He's definitely going to be a kind of big riser for me in my preseason ranks when I get those out. But I think the hit and power are both kind of potentially plus, and I think that's a profile that I tend to like a lot more than kind of like a 40 hit, maybe potential 60 power that we've kind of talked about in some of these other guys. Like I think too is like people seem to love Josue Burqueño, but I don't really kind of see so much that for Ralphie Velasquez. And like when looking at these two profiles, I'm like I'm not sure I really see the huge gap that a lot of people would insinuate there. I think both are potential like both kind of above average or better hit and power with maybe some kind of athleticism defensive questions. But I think Velasquez has a really good arm too, which could kind of help him maybe first base, maybe kind of outfield corner. I'm not sure yet, but I really like Ralphie Velasquez. EVs are great. I think he's a guy too that in terms of kind of pure upside, you can definitely argue in that kind of top 50 prospects range. I'll probably have him kind of in that tier 2, tier 3, and that kind of like 50 to 75 overall range. But I really like Ralphie Velasquez, and I think kind of his emergence is definitely kind of given a bit of life to an otherwise fairly bleak position at the top.
Yeah, this is another awesome thing about him is that he hits lefties. As a lefty hitter, during this sample size here in the second half, he hit 365, 420, 698 with half of his home runs against lefties. So he mashes lefties as a lefty. So no platoon fears for Ralphie Velasquez, no Xavier Isaac fears. So you got to love those splits for a lefty hitter. Next on the list, number 3 is, you already mentioned him, Josue Briseño. So Briseño here, kind of a similar profile, like catcher who's going to transition off catcher to first baseman, lefty, big lefty, young, reached double A. So very similar profile to Ralphie. I've got him up at 29 overall in my rankings. You can see the fScores love him: 115 power, 101 hit, 110 discipline, a 155 age adjusted WRC plus. So for Briseño, I think that ultimately he has a higher upside than Ralphie. He's obviously like a bigger dude too. I think he's got a higher upside than Ralphie, but I think Ralphie might have the higher floor because he doesn't strike out as much. Like he's got much better control of the plate, like much better plate skills. But I think Briseño has a higher outcome for EVs and bigger dude. So I think he can play into a little better. 76% contact rate too. He's shown when he was younger, like 80% contact rates. I think when he was an A ball, he was like the number one like from my memory, it was about a year ago now, but he was like number one in contact back then. But Briseño, my comp for him is Joey Votto mechanics. Not saying he's going to be Votto, but I'm saying that he has similar mechanics to Votto. If you watch their swings next to each other, but I give him a 50 out of 60 on the hit tool, 55 out of 60 on the plate approach, 55 out of 65 on the power for Briseño. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would actually I would actually think Briseño has the higher floor, and I lean that way because of the OBP skills. I think, although you can kind of say, you could argue like Velasquez is the better defender, maybe that kind of gives him a bit better floor. I think Velasquez's hit tool is slightly better with Briseño slightly more power. So I think it's kind of a lot closer to kind of pick your preference type. But I really like Briseño. I think that he can definitely be. I really like the bat. It's kind of one of those where when both the hit and the power both kind of grade out as well as he does, I'm kind of willing to overlook some of the defensive questions. I really like Ben Rice is just one that kind of comes to mind when looking at Briseño, and just kind of a guy who can limit the Ks, get on base, give you some good power, also with kind of still having kind of the good contact rates to pair with that, and also kind of a former catcher to more of a kind of first base DH type profile.
Yeah, for sure. Number 2 on the list is going to be Bryce Eldridge. So Eldridge obviously reached the majors. I don't know if he's going to start in the majors because like right now he's kind of like stuck at DH. Kind of a weird situation for him because they brought Devers in. There's rumors of like the Giants they were trying to get Marte. They were trying to get Donovan. Would Eldridge be involved in those talks just because do you really want a top prospect who's going to be cornered in a DH? Or can they teach him to play outfield? He's still young enough that he can learn a new position. Obviously, debuted at the age of 20, pretty impressive. Good numbers at the age of 20 in AAA. The biggest issue for me with Eldridge is that he just has so many gaps in his swing still. But what do you expect? I mean, he's 6'7", 240 pounds, reached the majors as a 20-year-old, and is a guy who was a two-way player when he was drafted as a pitcher and an outfielder. So like he's only been hitting like full time for like what, a year and a half or whatever at this point. So it's pretty crazy what he's really done to date. 122 power on the fScores. So there's definite like major power here. 95.7 average EV in the minors, 107.9 90th. Oh, that's in the sample size here. But reaching 114.6 max EV. So he's actually over the full season a 108.5 90th in the majors with a 16.2 barrel, or this is his minor league stats, not his majors. Sorry about that, but 25 bombs. So he just owned the minor leagues last year before the promotion. Young dude, so give him time before you kind of like judge how he's going to be ultimately. But the comp I threw on him is a taller Matt Olson with just like more gaps in the swing that he's trying to figure out.
Yeah, no, I love the Matt Olson comp. That was kind of one that was also coming to mind to me too. Maybe I think Rafael Devers is another one where, Devers, albeit kind of more of a kind of high chase guy who can still sustain it due to his power. Maybe Eldridge a little bit different in that can still sustain the power with, maybe kind of closer to, below average fringe kind of contact rates and a K rate. But the power metrics are elite, which is really impressive just from a 20-year-old in AAA and the majors. 95.7 average in AAA is just absurd, and the launch angles are good. The hard hit rate of just 62.7% is just ridiculous almost. I really think that, and pair that too with the chase rate is kind of a little higher than you like to see. We'll see how it kind of, it was a lot lower in the majors, 20.2 in the majors versus 28.4 in AAA. I think that's something we could see kind of continue to improve as he matures. But the zone contact is probably right around average, swing strike rate a little higher than you like to see it. But I think in terms of pure upside, there's nobody that I'd rank higher in the first base position. I think Bryce Eldridge is still a top 25 prospect for me. And I love the kind of Matt Olson comp that you threw out. And I think that we could realistically, within the next kind of 2-3 years, see a kind of 40 home run bat, maybe kind of 240. Maybe the OBP isn't great, but just a guy who hits the ball hard enough. The power metrics are good enough and just hits the ball at ideal angles to where he can just be a pure middle of the order slugger for years to come.
Yeah, for sure. Number one is safer bat for sure. And then we've got the proximity on his side. So that's why he kind of gets this jump here. It's Sal Stewart, who's number 21 overall in my rankings. I actually have him as my top redraft hitter just because he's banked to play more or less. He's going to be in the middle of a Reds lineup. He's going to have a great ballpark. But fScores, he's just very solid across the board. 112 power, 108 hit, 108 discipline, 99 speed, a 163 age adjusted WRC plus. So you're not going to fight an near 80% contact rate, 150 extra base hit plus, doesn't strike out a lot with only a 15.7 K rate, 9.7 walk rate. And he does hit the ball hard. This is something that a lot of people aren't really like, oh, he's just a good hitter. People think about the hit tool first with Sal, but the EVs, he had a 93.1 average, 107.2 90th, and 113.7 max in the minors. So that's actually really good EVs, way better than a lot of people think about. And he gets superior angles on the ball too. 21% barrel rate, 15.1 air pull, 14-degree launch angle. So no launch angle issues with him. Gets the great angles, great hit tool. Those things are going to make his power play up. So even if you look at these things and you're like, I think he's more like a 25 homer guy in Great American Small Park with the hit tool that he has and the angles that he gets to, he could get to 30 home runs in my mind. Plus he's going to throw in some steals, 10 steals in 2024, 17 in 2025. He actually looks like I've seen him. He was trying to focus on getting in better shape this offseason. He actually looks leaned down from what I've seen in his offseason stuff. So maybe he does continue with some speed. So maybe I don't know if there's a Josh Naylor 30 steals in there or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's getting 10 steals in the majors, which is pretty nifty for a first baseman.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think to play devil's advocate a bit, because I don't want to spend this whole podcast agreeing with you as much as we have so far. The couple things I would like to see improve are just the chase rate being kind of a big one. It was kind of 33% in the majors, kind of 30.5 in the minors. So I think I'd like to see that get a little bit lower. But I do love kind of the hit and power. I just think if we're looking at kind of more of a mid to upper 20s chase rate, it's going to translate a little bit better, at least the average and OBP sense against kind of MLB pitching. And then also kind of another thing, the pull air rate looked kind of really good in kind of the brief MLB sample. Would just kind of be curious to see kind of how that looks kind of as he kind of gets a longer sample in the majors, because I think that's going to be the big factor that allows his power to play up in that park.
Yeah, definitely. I comped him to Manny Machado light. Obviously, he's going to be at first, not at third, but do you like that from a hit tool perspective for him?
I'm going to be
They're
honest.
both Miami guys. They're both Miami guys too.
From a hit tool perspective, I can see it. I think lesser from an OBP perspective. I think the kind of lower walk rates that we've seen as he's kind of moved up in the upper minors has given me a little bit of hesitancy that he's kind of, Machado light, at least in Machado's OBP skills. But I get from the hit, and I think the power is kind of more of a low 20s, at least as is. Definitely, if we see the chase rate drop down, maybe we can kind of get into the kind of mid upper 20s power. And that ballpark too is just a hitter's paradise to hit in. But I wouldn't say the comp is I wouldn't say the comp is ridiculous. I can kind of see it in some elements, but I think the power and OBP both being kind of not quite where Machado's were coming up, give me a little bit of hesitancy on kind of throwing him out there.
Yeah, I think they're boys too. I might be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure that like Machado has taken on like a mentorship role or something for him. So
I think my
uh,
another question I kind of have with Stewart too that not I wouldn't kind of have with Machado is kind of where does he fit defensively? Like I don't think the arm is gonna hold up at third long term. Like first base is fine, but I think kind of makes him a bit more less interesting, both from a kind of pro and fantasy perspective with his profile. Even though like the hit and power both has enough to kind of have him be a regular there. I'm kind of very curious to see just kind of what the upside is with Stewart because we talked about the floor a little bit, but I think if you're looking at a guy, we've seen kind of power gains kind of come in a little bit later, or kind of hitters be able to kind of make adjustments with their swing, kind of cut down chase rates with kind of pro coaching at the MLB level. So I think like the floor is kind of like a boring regular, but I think the upside is kind of still to be determined a bit with Stewart. So very interested to see kind of where we're looking at kind of upside wise, and he's definitely a guy that one of my kind of top prospects that I'll be targeting in kind of redraft leagues. I think the instant impact, as you mentioned, is there really a good Reds lineup that could still aid his counting stats, and obviously the ballpark. That's such a great place to hit. And looking at after pick 200, like sign me up.
yeah, definitely. Okay, so there's our first base prospects, and we're gonna sign off here in a second. Owen, what are you up to? What are the new things going on with you?
Yeah, so if you all did not see, I'm an official partner of Fantrax now. Very excited for that. It's kind of my platform of choice. All of my dynasty leagues are on there. So that was some big news for me lately. Kind of FYPD season kind of scaling down a little bit, but still putting out a lot about that. Going to have a lot of threads kind of coming out soon. Some kind of interesting ideas I've been kind of thinking about for a while, and obviously kind of still doing the best that I can to put out the best fantasy content I can, whether it's kind of shallow leagues, deeper leagues, keeper, dynasty, redraft, anything in between.
Yeah, awesome. Owen does great work. Make sure if you're not following him, you give him a follow at Owen_FBB on the X machine. And then also make sure you subscribe to MLB Data Warehouse where you can get all these awesome tools. When you subscribe, make sure you tell John you're subscribing because of Tim and Doc. Because I actually had a couple people message me and they're like, "Hey, I'm subscribing," and I said, "Tell John, he's the paymaster. You got to tell him so you make sure he knows who to pay. So you got to tell John." Hey, I'm subscribing because of Tim and Doc. Pay those guys some coin, sir. Good sir. We're sitting here with our little bowls. More, please. Waiting for John to pay us here. But also make sure you sign up for the prospect package if you're interested on getting all my prospect rankings, my FYPD stuff, my dynasty rankings. I've got a bunch of cheat sheets for drafting that's really easy, that has all the fScores all heat mapped like you can see on the screen right now, has all the fScores heat map for every player. So if you like the fScores and you like to use them as like an easy cheat sheet for drafting, and you're just like, hey, I need a guy with power right now, who do I get? Or I need a guy with speed, who do I get? It's sortable. It's spreadsheet, so it's sortable, and you can move guys up and down however you see fit. If you don't like my rankings, but you still want the fScores, so it's only $29.99. It's the price of Starbucks and a sandwich at this point in time. So go
Yeah,
get it and win your leagues.
yeah, yeah. Don't be like me. Don't go to Starbucks. Tell them your name is Owen for them to announce your coffee is Alan. Sub to Tim's prospect package. He does some great stuff. And please, 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 if you're not already sub to Fantrax, use my link.
Awesome. All right.
Let
Thanks
me,
for everybody for
you know,
watching.
let me get that bag a little bit and help me renew my partnership.
Yes, do it. Go do it right now. Peace out, everybody. We'll see you next time.